for the familiar faces and names on the call. So today is a follow-up to our first session. The first session was more about why Caredove, I guess, and today is more about what to do to make your services referable and findable in all the right places. So the meeting's recorded, and you can, if you're watching this on record, there's going to be about 4 or 5 key things we're going to go through. I guess chapters to the presentation, and we'll get through that in easily 45 minutes. So also thanks to Tessa for manning the chat line here. And I'm going to say also that Chantel is going to add some color commentary as I go. She's the network admin for Access CSS, and she's there to help you with some of the things I'm going to go through today. So
thanks, Jeff.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. All right. So what's Caredove? Again, we're an e-referral solution. We've been working in Ontario for about the last 10 years, which is a lifetime for software. And we've been working with the Champlain first and then the broader East region for a majority of that time, maybe 6 years or so. And we serve about 1,000 organizations in Ontario. So what do we do? What's interesting about the community healthcare space? So different than specialists, community agencies get referrals from many places. You have a plethora of referral sources. Clinicians at different organizations, even among your own network here, reception staff, etc., can refer to you. You get the public requesting service. You have service navigators in different organizations looking for service. Primary care does refer, but then you have other care coordinators like at the historically home and community care organizations, and so on. So you have the exciting challenge of having to deal with all those referral sources. We try to be your referral inbox. And the core to the sort of building block of the system is having a good listing, a service listing. So we're going to go through that a little bit today, what some of the key architectural aspects of a service listing are, and then how that helps your service listing be discovered in different places. All right, so again, Access CSS is the broadened brand of the Champlain CSS, now broadening to the east, and it involves both a publicly facing element and clinician facing element for referrals. So we're promoting in a variety of channels, and key to that though is your service listing. If it's good, it has a better chance of performing. So this website is not yet launched, but this will be the public facing side of the universe. It's beautiful, I think. Or is it launched? I guess
it is launched.
Yes, it is launched. So I'm used to saying it's not launched, and now I got to say it is launched. So so that was great. It's really gorgeous if you hadn't taken a look at it. And then we also have the clinician search site, which replaces the Champlain and CSS grid. So I want to spend a little bit of time just on what is a service category and what is a target population. So this arrow, this red arrow here, points to a service category, and the blue arrow down here points to the target population. And those two elements of a service listing are fundamental to being discovered, right? Now let me go to the grid. If I were to do a search for, I'll say palliative care services, if I search for, let's say just the palliative care day programs, and I'm going to search at 1000 Main Street, or no, 1000 Bank Street, that's the one. in Ottawa. All right. I'm going to see the service category, adult day program, listed at the top, and then the service results, these search results. And of course, the address is also important. I should say that address is kind of fundamental too, because we want to show the relevant services nearest to where the person lives, which is the address here. All right, so service category. Now, where's that target population? Why does that matter? Well, if I select the service category, it has target population palliative. And the reason why this service showed or displayed here is because it's filtering all the adult day programs, filtering them down to just the palliative ones, right? So palliative from within the broader set of adult day show just the palliative. So that's why putting your service inside an adult day program category is important, and then having the target population be palliative or let's say older adults helps you get found when looking in a particular problem area. Okay, service category, target population, or kind of problem area. If I were to do a search for all palliative care programs of all types, now I would get a variety of service categories displayed in the results. See how I say all palliative care programs? Well, now it's any category that has a palliative care target population listed in it, right? Again, we have palliative as a target population. That's why it's showing here. So really important concept. You don't always need to use a target population, but when your service focuses clearly on one or two tops, then you select the target population. Meals on Wheels doesn't need to have a target population. People know what it is. It's Meals on Wheels. We're searching for Meals on Wheels. I mean, you can say older adults if you want, but there are programs though, for example, day programs that specialize in serving people with dementia or Alzheimer's. And so you would specify Alzheimer dementia day program in your description of your day program. If your day program focuses more on a different group, or maybe it's all seniors, then just put older adults, and that's fine. One thing we don't want to see is an organization putting in 15 target populations. Well, you don't really have a target population if you serve 15 of them. Just leave it blank. Chantel, do you want to add anything on this page here, or have I kind of hit that point?
Yeah, just to make sure that when you're selecting both the category and the target populations for your service, that they correspond with headings that you're seeing within this kind of search grid. It just ensures that your services are, again, going to be searchable, as in people are going to be able to find them. If you're selecting a category that you do not see in this list or in any of the drop-down menus, that means it's not connected to one of those kind of search buckets and may not come up in search results. Also, as the network admin, I will from time to time go into your various listings and update some of those things to ensure that you continue to remain searchable if we're making changes to, for example, our search categories. Thanks, Jeff.
Awesome. Yes. There is sometimes some housekeeping to be done. So, service navigation, finding services, bit of a team effort. So we try to all work together on it. And the idea is to just make them better all the time. So that's what we're all about. So what else can we do to make service listings really great? Eligibility. All right. What's a scenario? I hear sometimes, we all hear sometimes that, oh, I got referral from somebody and they weren't eligible. It's frustrating dealing with people who are clearly not eligible, maybe because, well, for a variety of reasons, right? So when we do eligibility well in Caredove, it shows up like it does on the screen here, where it says client has diabetes, and the user has to select yes, really, to meet that eligibility, right? Over 18, yes. So if we specify the eligibility in the listing, in the section that says eligibility, it'll show up like this on the page. Client has diabetes. Yes, no. I'm going to show you an example. Here's a listing for fictional one at our Dove Community Support Services. So we have this listing, and it's a support group dealing with grief, and the description says provides guidance, resources, and support. Probably my least favorite kind of description. Next to started in 1962 by a group of, it's fairly broad, the description. Ideally, you put like really clear, what do we do at this groups? But we'll kind of walk through what a good service description looks like. So that's all it is. Like support group provides guidance, resource support. I'm going to look at this agency's referral inbox in our fictional Dove Community Support Services. And when I scan through, you can see in the status column that there are a couple of people who've signed up for dealing with grief support group, but the referral status is ineligible. So they've been marked as ineligible. Now the person who's done the intake said, nope, ineligible. This sort of emphasizes another point, which is if you mark the status of the referral as ineligible, or you give an outcome on the referral and close it off, you will both provide feedback to the person who referred to you, because they'll get that notification and they'll understand a little bit better, maybe, that what they're sending you is ineligible. Also, you'll be able to do what I'm about to do here, which is look at the referrals and see what if they're quality referrals. So this one, ineligible ones are a good red flag, or a red flag for wanting to improve them, right? So let's do that. All right. So we open the referral, we see that the person's ineligible. We can see the service right in the referral. Okay, so when you open the referral, you can see the service. You can get to the service listing by clicking on that blue line right there. So you're seeing referrals are ineligible. Let's just make this listing better so that we stop getting ineligible services. But let's look at it. I look at the service. I see it doesn't say much. It's a health education class, provides guidance, resource support. I'm going to hit that update button. First thing I'm going to do is look at the target population and see if I can find one that applies. And of course, there's one that's serving people who experiencing grief. So I selected that one. I put seniors as well. So that seems reasonable. And then I'm going to scroll down to the service description. I'm going to put something that's a little more interesting and clear than provides guidance, resource support. And I've changed it to say provides guidance, resource support for seniors who have recently lost a loved one. Okay. Focusing on managing grief, finding balance. Participants explore ways to navigate loss, building resilience. So you don't want to write a book, but a few hundred characters isn't a bad idea. Maybe a couple dozen words is a good idea. Now you can also go too far. We do count the characters on this service description. You can see characters remaining is 535. So you can also make it too long. People don't have a lot of time when they're making a referral to read a lot. So try to make it pithy and clear.
On that note, with regards to your service descriptions, I just wanted to make a quick point that for those of you that participate at the service network tables, we are hoping to land on some consistency around the service descriptions, just to ensure that it's very clear that when you're offering Meals on Wheels, that you're kind of aligned with other providers, and the same thing with the day program. It means that members of the public don't have to read through, 10 different differently named programs with different definitions when really truly they're looking at the same kind of service. So if you're interested in participating in those activities for the functional centers that you're funded for, please reach out. Thanks.
Right. Thanks, Chantel. Absolutely. So you can work together on common service descriptions, common titles. From the Caredove perspective, we're providing the taxonomy of, that includes the way to name your service and a category to put it in and the target population that you want to serve. So beyond that, there's lots of flexibility. We also give you this eligibility field. Right now with this service, there is no eligibility listed. So that's the big red flag here for this story of making eligibility clear. Why don't we add an eligibility? So you must have recently lost a loved one. Okay, it's for grief and it's for bereavement. Let's make that clear. And so now when you look at the service listing, you see those two criteria, must be a senior, must have recently lost a loved one. And the way it shows up on the search, or sorry, in the flow, is the person has to select yes to those in order to proceed. So that will go a long way towards reducing ineligible referrals if you're paying attention to that referral outcome, the notes, why are they eligible or ineligible, and then updating that eligibility field in your service listing. I'm going to pause there before I jump into just broader listing management sorts of things. Anything in the I'm not looking at the chat right now, but are any questions there we should pause for?
So far, so good.
Okay. All right. So broadly speaking, listings management. All right. We went from the sort of referral inbox, looking at the outcome of a referral, seeing that there's an eligible one. But now, what do we want to do just to make sure our listings are reasonably up to date? Right. So every organization has this upper menu where if you select your listings in Caredove, you will see all, oops, wrong way, all the services that your organization provides. So at Dove Community Support Services, we have 8 service listings in, looks like 5 categories of service. And if I expand on that menu, I will see all the services expanded in my, on the page, right? And so if I go to look at, one of the key places to look is to go look at the last updated field. So I've been lax in keeping my listings up to date, it looks like, at Dove Community Support Services. So it says I've last updated 5 years ago. And when I look at the status, it's still saying something kind of crazy like closed for COVID, which doesn't make any sense. So we really need to update the status and the information in that listing. And all I do is I hit edit, right? And now I'm just going to go through and check for any inaccuracies. Like, for example, if I'm missing a target population, maybe I should add it, right? I'm going to add older adults to my target population because that's sort of what we're focused on. I'm going to clean out that closed for COVID status and maybe put something on there that might be more useful to people referring, something like when there's availability or when there isn't. Again, this is a field and these areas are areas that you can work on as a sector. Okay, so adult day programs are a great example, actually, of how you can agree on sharing availability, right? So if you're looking for ways to structure that status field across the adult day programs, you can let us know. But that's a really good area to look at on how to standardize. It could be wait time information, it could be availability information, it could be day of week information. It's various things that could be put there. If I scroll down the page, anything else I need to update, maybe the address of the program, maybe the hours of operation need to be updated. We can do that quickly. Check the service details. You want to make sure you're not being too redundant either. Like if you put the availability in one spot, you have to put it again in another spot because then you're maintaining it in 2 spots. So I can see here that I've said now in a couple places the program's offered 3 times a week. Well, up here, we've already indicated the hours of operation Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So, be careful about where to put your information so as to make it easy for you to manage it in the first place. And then, some activity description. If you offer transportation to the program, every service category in Caredove has a little bit of different information that it can request and prompt for. So For example, day programs, you might offer transportation to it. And then I can look and see that the cost is changed. And again, I can update the cost. Let's say it's gone to $30 a day. And I want to change the eligibility, right? There usually isn't a max age for the programs that we're talking about today, but there might be a minimum age, and that's where you put that in there if there is. And again, eligibility, if it's really specialized to a particular type of audience or target population, you would put that in the eligibility as well. That way the person has to click yes to that in order to move through. The final thing on the list is all on the edit listings page. So you can cover a lot of ground with the edit listings page. You can also change on the edit listings page if you want to change from not being available to the public to being available to the public. So direct in this context means the public can, wait a minute. Tessa, what is that again? Direct and booked. Oh, sorry, I'm had a brain meltdown there. So initially we weren't allowing bookings, but now let's say we wanted to allow booked referrals. I'm changing this referral method to allow for booked referrals to occur. I'd have to create availability of those for those services, some available appointment times. Also referral sources. If I want the referral source to be inclusive of the public as well, no login required. You might be wondering, I'm not getting any referrals from the public. Why aren't I? This is a place to look. You can say whether you accept that or not. Right. So on places like Access CSS website, if this is turned on to anybody, then that service will be able to receive referrals from the public. Okay, that's just the bottom of the listings page. You can adjust that there. And then finally, if there's a referral form that you would like to, and this is generally going to be agreed upon more broadly in your group, particularly as you're going towards LiveCare. Many of the organizations using that, you're going to want to pick probably a standard form that you want to use, Chantel, for this particular purpose, and agree on that so that the data eventually, if we do that integration, that it flows into a LiveCare nicely. But there is a form library from which you can pick. Just do that with some caution, let's say. I'm going to pause there. Anything to add from Tessa or Chantal?
No, good point about integrations, Jeff. Thank you.
All good.
All right. And now it says, even though it was me that did it, it says just now updated by Tessa. So you'll see that the date changes on the last updated date. And, if something hasn't been touched in a year, it's probably a good idea to take a look at it. Programs don't change that often, but they do change enough, right? Particularly that status field. If you're using it, probably needs to be updated regularly. So scan down your listings page, track through, see what you need to update, just do some general gardening on your listings, and keep it nicely managed is a great way to make sure you get good referrals. All right, scenario 3, I want to make a new listing. We have two types of service categories broadly, basically two types. A service that you drive to, which is point-based, or a service that comes to your home, more or less, and that's area-based. All right, you drive to it, or you don't have to drive to it. It's just something you get in your home. So how do I create a listing? I click on the Add Listing button in that same listing menu that I was in before, where I can see all my listings. And this is going to walk you through a little wizard of how to create a listing. So it'll ask you all the questions. The first thing it's going to ask you is, which category are you creating this service in? And there's quite a number of categories in Caredove. Excuse me. What you'll want to do is scroll down to the section of categories that are in the grouping community support services. So if you scroll down that list, you'll see CSS there. And if you, within this within this grouping, we've organized most of the CSS types of service categories there. So if you're not sure which area to go to, probably this is a good bet to get into. Let's say, and if you're not sure what a category means, if you hover over that category, you'll see a little description that comes up about what that category is. Now, again, most of you won't be creating new services too often. And so if you need help with creating a service, you can either ask us or ask Chantel if you need help picking the right category. Again, the category, if it needs to be also something you can find on the search interface over here, right? Or over here. But if you create something as like, I don't know, a assertive community treatment team for mental health, let's say, and you selected it from the mental health grouping of mental health services, I guarantee you we do not have assertive community treatment team on the CSS service grid here, right? So I'm using a bit of a ridiculous example, but you get my point. We're trying to focus in on the CSS sector here in this particular grid. Now, your organization may do more things than CSS, and that's perfectly fine. But for today's training discussion purposes, if you're creating CSS service and you want it to be found, look in this grouping.
That's a great point, Jeff. Thanks for making that. Again, the focus of the Access CSS network is community support services. So for multi-service agencies also offering maybe child and youth services or women in violence services, maybe you have a food bank on site, that sort of thing. You can still have those listings and link them, whether they be to your website or to other networks, but Access CSS is specific to community support services. So you can, again, create those listings, have those listings, use them in other networks, link them to your own website, etc. But they will not appear in search results if they're tagged as categories kind of outside of that search grid that we were looking at.
Right. Now I'm going to use a category that we're not really talking about today, but just for the sake of illustration, you pick a category and you name it. You name the service, right? So back to Chantel's point, if you're delivering a Meals on Wheels service, having a service title that includes Meals on Wheels makes a lot of sense, right? So some consistency there is good, but we can always look at it after you create it too, and that's fine. Because we're creating a point-based service, it'll prompt for the address, right? So you put in the address. Then the next prompt will be, is this going to be bookable? So if you imagine it being bookable, where booked intake appointments, let's say, are a thing that you're envisaging, you would say yes. And you would indicate the calendar in Caredove that you want the service to be booked in. Okay, so that can be, you can have one or more calendars in Caredove. So I'm going to say yes, because I think booking intake appointments is the best thing ever. And I'm going to say it's a point-based service. But if I were to do an area-based service and it was rides and transportation, and I named it medical appointment transportation, let's say, you're going to see that there's no address here. Instead, I'm prompted to describe the coverage area of the service. Where do I pick up people in order to do my transportation service? So that's what this coverage area is for. And if I'm creating a service, let's say for this place in Aurelia, I can select that I pick up people in Aurelia. And then I can select that I pick up people after that. I also include, let's say, the township of Severn, and that's my pickup zone. So for area-based service, knowing the coverage area is key, as opposed to a point-based service, having an accurate address is key. All right. Otherwise, we've covered off the rest of the service listings page. We just wanted to show that variation of when you do create a service that is for something that goes to people's homes, like friendly visiting or personal support or Meals on Wheels, transportation, you're going to be prompted for this service area. Again, if you need help, we have a little chat feature and right inside of Caredove that you can ask us for help. All right, no meeting would be complete if we didn't talk about booked referrals. Why do we do booked referrals? So here's our fictional Dove Community Sports Services. And I'm going to look at the Meals on Wheels services here. And I'm going to see that here's a Meals on Wheels service where Bob Dylan, 18 days ago, requested the Meals on Wheels service. It looks like this person, Tessa, referred Bob to me, to my organization, Dove Community Sports Services. And this is the referral I'm looking at. And you see that little icon that we have there that says, my intake person at Dove Community Sports Services tried to call the client 3 times. And I guess they're in the phone tag world of trying to get a hold of Bob to get him started on Meals on Wheels. And so I haven't been able to tell Tessa that Bob's admitted or not because I haven't been able to. So we're approaching the time where it's probably like, well, we've tried 3 times and let's move on. But what would be a better process for that? Well, sharing like there. Okay, so the other thing just to show is the one below that one, the one below Bob Dylan's, is a booked referral, and it's to Andrea Stewart for rides and transportation. So Andrea's doing an intake. Sorry, Robin, you can see down here, November 13th, is doing an intake appointment for Andrea. All right. The one below that, you can see closed admitted, is another referral that was booked. So it came in with an appointment time, and you can see it in that column under appointment, right? But the Meals on Wheels ones are all coming in with no appointment time on them. So they're just service requests landing in our inbox, after which we have to call. So ideally, in the ideal inbox that we look at, and that well, I would want to have at Dove Community Sports Services, is every one of those referrals comes in with a booked intake appointment. That way my staff aren't spending all this time calling people back and leaving voicemails. So how do I get somebody at my organization to create some intake appointments? Well, it's easy. They go to their calendar, and they go to the intake calendar in the case of Dove Community Sports Services, and they create a new intake appointment pattern. All right. All I have to do is click that new entry. I'm going to pause on this slide for a second. This tells you everything you need to know about how to create intake appointments. So I like the idea of recurring time slots, so I don't have to think about it. And we're going to say that if my name's Ann and I do intake, I'm creating a slot at 10 a.m. and at 2 p.m. every day. Maybe it's 15-minute intake or 30-minute intake. Actually, I'm saying it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can see it repeats on those days, and it repeats weekly. And Ann's going to do those intakes, and she's going to do them by calling the client, and she's going to create that intake appointment and set it. And when she gets booked, she'll get notified. She'll get an email that she's going to call that person back at that time. That makes your service even more referable for everybody, right? If you're coming from the website, if you're coming from home and community care, if your intake appointment is there to be booked, people are much more likely to refer to you, right? Because they know they're handing somebody off to a real person who will call them at a real time. All right, so now Ann's created some availability, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there it is on the calendar. And when it shows up in the public and other places, it shows up like this. It says, you want to book an intake time. And you can see there's the person, there's the time, continue on. Sidebar, important sidebar, those same requests that come from, for example, the Access CSS site or the E-referral page, you can actually put the same kind of request button on your own agency's website, right? So that this little button on your website can launch the Caredove booking form or service request form if you don't want to do booking, and have it land right from your website into your inbox from there as well, so that you're streamlining referrals into your Caredove inbox from wherever they're coming from, your website, home and community care, other people referring to you, Ocean, what have you, right? One inbox. And from here, the more you get your referrals into here, the more we'll be able to, you'll be able to manage them in one spot, and we'll be able to do some more interesting things with those referrals, like integrate them into Ally Care, right? Which we can talk about again in the future, but that's part of the goal. So it's 3:38. I've been talking for 40 minutes or so, almost. Maybe I should pause there and see if there are questions.
Now, Jeff, we had a question in the chat about whether or not it's a standard practice that